a huge concern, and I must confess I haven't been reading this yet, just perhaps due to our more humble role in this summit. We've just been handed over from 1 minute ago, but it seems very nice so far. But I have to draw the attention and emphasize the Article 13 from the Convention of Human Rights from 1951, that everybody have the rights to move freely within the global society. So, of course, it's a good thing about some security ports that we can monitor, of course, and more surveillance. But we have strongly to emphasize that every person, every member of the fraternity of Earth has the rights to be everyone alike. So, of course, it's really concerning.
Can I say something? The countries that we actually do bilateral agreements with here are actually the countries already enrolled in our European neighborhood policy programs. Sure. And they are enrolled upon conditionality, and they have to comply with the rules that we actually set them in order to get this funding and financial aid that,
of course,
we are aiming at here.
Yeah, sure. But we should still mention the camps outside of the external borders. Every person has the rights to move to France, to Denmark, to move to England. They're not concerning the Dublin Convention or different kind of.
But then we speak of
asylum seekers.
Then we speak of asylum seekers.
Basically, all human beings, also irregular immigrants, have the rights to move from inside the EU.
I think there's probably Mr. Collins might comment upon that point of view.
The fact that dealing with a problem outside of Europe is very, very promising. Let's keep it outside of Europe. That's not giving them a carrot and rewards by promising them any visa or asylum.
Would you give them potatoes?
But no, excuse me, Mr. Collins, but I expected that you would be very excited by these safe ports outside
yes.
EU. But what about the new idea of safe ports within the EU?
We, as I stressed before, let's keep it outside of Europe. The source to the problem is outside of Europe, so let's contain it there. And then we create a stronger Europe from within to ensure the national countries, our national culture. Our first goal has to be to ensure that the problem stay outside of Europe.
Mr. President, what was the status of these internal safe ports already mentioned? Are we just talking about relabeling the existing camps for illegal migrants and asylum seekers in southern Europe, or is it actually a new system?
Well, we already have an existing system, and I'm going to read it out loud here so you understand it perfectly.
Which page?
It's page 3, and it's the second last section. It states here, and that's the new amendment to our final proposal here, that the Commission has recognized the need for clarifications on how safe ports are to be established in Europe. And our initial idea here is to recognize existing refugee camps being adjusted into the framework of a more effective cross-border cooperation through the application of a mechanism of monitoring. And this measure should be utilized and kept in line with fundamental human rights. And here it says, as you probably already know, that we're going to deal here with the existing camps in Lampedusa and southern Italy, existing camps in Greece, as already existing camps along our southern borders. So it's the existing camps that we're going to deal with here. But that's the inside.
One minute. You also promised that since you won't be calling for extra funds, but shuffling around existing programs, which programs are you then going to use to ensure this improved monitoring and ensure these human rights that quite appalling stories have been raised in the media the last couple of days about human rights violations?
Well, as you already know, you should probably at least, that within the last couple of years, we have merged 3 of our major funds within the EU's external relations into the Common Asylum and Migration Fund. And there we have actually agreed to reallocate a lot of the money for the funding in order to make this project work. And I spoke to the presidency, and we agreed upon that if more money were actually needed in order to make these measures here efficient and make them work well efficiently, then we would be needing more money. But in our calculations, we actually at the moment we can't do just fine with just reallocating the existing money.
Okay,
So,
but one worry that's also been raised is that perhaps a concern that you are sort of cannibalizing the good neighborhood policy by yoking it to conditions about limiting migration. That instead of developing these border countries could be another way of ensuring that perhaps less migrants flow to Europe instead of this sort of gunboat diplomacy.
That is actually our approach, and that's the approach we have taken on since the emergence of the European Neighbourhood Policy in 2004. All these programs, of course we need to help our neighbouring countries in order to secure actually an internal free Europe of security and peace and mobility. So that is our main goal, and that is Europe's reputation in the on the global stage. And we need to take on this approach here in order to achieve the goals on human rights and everything they have there. In the ENP programs, we do have all the measures which our neighboring countries, our third countries need to take, but it's upon conditionality.
But don't you fear a kind of spiraling down effect where they can't live up to the conditions, then it's getting worse, you cut funding, they slip further into chaos?
No, I'm convinced that, well, when you look at history, and that's both to the eastern side of our borders and to the southern side, I mean, we are actually doing just fine. And as you see right now, there is an internal, there are internal movements in both the Middle Eastern countries and the Northern African countries wanting more democracy. So now we're actually seeing people's voice. They want democracy, they want social justice, and they want human rights. So we believe that in line with our ENP programs, they are actually moving in the direction that we actually want them to do.
Is that something that our experts from the human rights and trafficking experts can agree upon? Do you see events moving in the right directions as perhaps as a consequence of the European neighbourhood policy?
Yeah, I think it's still a bit too early to see long-term effects, but I know that the ENP actually has a large section on preventing trafficking in the Ukraine, but this is only for Ukraine, so it would need to be widened out and also combined with EU internal measures like the Stockholm program, or also NGOs like La Strada, who are already working on helping victims of trafficking, should be included more, so that a holistic approach can be found to combating trafficking.
Speaking of a holistic approach, with the more wider picture of human rights, are you optimistic, fairly non-descriptive, or do you have a pessimistic?
Basically we are optimistic. But I must say I wasn't really paying attention when the president said, I'm sorry about that. Because I still was, me as a lobbyist for Amnesty International, my nice buddy Morten. I was still wondering about some of the crap actually was being said from the national press man.
Let's try to keep a civil
I have another thing we have to say. So,
any particular opinion?
No, for that one.
For the commission?
No, I'm just waiting for.
That one?
No, sorry for Mr. Gornish. I just take that.
Mr. Gornish,
I will just underline this is what happens when you invite several.
Let's keep it civil. There's been a lot of talk of burden sharing.
I would like to talk about
Mr. Gollis, there's been much talk about burden sharing. Is there anything that you can see of positive aspects of this burden sharing?